Hello, Dr. Clif, your movement recovery specialist, and today we're going to talk about protein. Now, a couple weeks ago, I started a series on protein bars, and I've been eating a protein bar every morning and talking about it, how it tastes, what it's made of, and I've gotten a few different questions about protein sources. So let's go over a few basics. There are three main, what we call macronutrients. Carbohydrates, think of, sugar, potatoes, starchy and sugary things that are mainly for energy. Fats, oils, butters, there's a fair amount of fat in nuts that provide longer term energy and also do a lot of other important things in the body that we could do a whole nother video on. And then protein. Protein comes mostly from animal sources, but you can also get a good deal of protein through plant-based sources. There's many people that are vegetarians or even complete vegans that get all of their protein through plant sources. It's a little bit more of a challenge for a few reasons that we'll talk about, but it's possible to do. Protein helps to build muscle. It helps your muscles recover from hard exercise. It helps to build healthy skin, hair, well, not so much hair for me, but protein is very important for overall recovery and growth in your body. When we talk about supplements, there are two main types of protein you'll see. There's protein concentrate, which is where they strip down the protein source, whether it's meat or plant-based, and have a little bit of fat and carbohydrates left. So it'll be about 70 to 80% protein, and there will be a little bit of the other stuff. Or there's protein isolate, where they use different techniques to isolate the protein only, and it'll be at least 90% protein only. So the isolate, if it says on your protein bar or your protein shake made with, whey isolate, let's say, it's a much cleaner version of protein, which allows you to have less carbohydrates and less fat if that's what you're looking for. There's also two types of protein: complete versus incomplete. Protein is made up of amino acids, like little building blocks. And there are 9 essential amino acids that your body can't make on its own. In the incomplete proteins, which are typically plant-based, well, always plant-based, if you have an animal-based protein, it's a complete protein. It has all of the essential and non-essential amino acids because it's coming from an animal source. Plant-based sources don't have all of the complete typically, so you have to have a couple different protein sources put together so that you have all of those 9 essential amino acids that your body can't make on its own. Now, let's compare some of the different types of protein powder out there. Number 1 is whey protein. Whey protein is probably the most common protein source you're going to see for a few reasons. 1, it's cheap. 2, it's been shown to promote muscle growth and recovery as well as fat loss in a lot of studies. And it's easy to absorb fairly quickly. which makes it great for like pre or post workout recovery. The problem as far as a con is that it's made with milk, and a lot of people have milk allergies or just general lactose intolerance, or they're on a vegetarian vegan diet and they don't want a milk source. So whey could be an issue for you, but it's the most common source you're going to see out there. The second protein source, not quite as common, although it seems to me, especially in the protein shake world, is increasing in popularity a little, is casein protein. It also comes from milk, and it's absorbed slower, so typically people have it in the evening as a long-term recovery drink, or in some of the more complex protein bars or shakes, you'll see that they're made with a proprietary super blend mixture protein, and they'll have whey and casein and maybe 2 or 3 other proteins all thrown together so that they claim it's doing all kinds of magical things for 24 hours straight when you drink it or eat it. Because casein comes from milk, it has the same cons as the whey protein does. If you have a milk allergy, if you are just trying to avoid animal-based products, then it's not the best choice. The third type of protein you'll come across, and this used to be, not that long ago, not very common to see, at least in my experience, but I do see it a little more often in bars, especially the most common bar that I had a few of in my 30 bars in 30 days series is the RX bars, is egg protein. Egg protein comes from the egg. Not a lot to say about it. It's a whole protein source, and it's not quite as concentrated, typically a little more expensive, but still realistic price. Cons, the same kind of things as with the milk. If you have an egg allergy, which some people do, not a good choice. And if you're trying to stay away from animal-based products, not a good choice. Now, the fourth source is the most popular one for the vegetarian vegans out there, typically, and it's also a source that has a little bit of controversy that I have had some questions about, and that's soy protein. It's made from the soybean. So this has no animal-based product. The problem with soy is that there's a concern by a lot of people that it's genetically modified. Not always, but often. And some people are very concerned about any GMOs. Typically on your protein source, it'll say, non-GMO, real big, if it isn't, because they know a lot of people are concerned about that. And also, soy, in some studies, is shown to work kind of like a estrogen precursor and kind of throw off your hormone profile, especially for men. I'm kind of on the fence with that. I try to stay away from too much soy personally, but I don't know if it's necessarily the worst thing. It has been found if you have soy products that are fermented, that all that estrogen precursor stuff isn't a big deal. So, natural soy sauce that they ferment, stinky tofu. I'm not really a big tofu fan, unless it's the extra soft that you blend up and add some cocoa and it tastes like high protein pudding. That's good stuff. Oh, hey, that's a whole different episode. We can talk about healthy desserts. But soy, I personally would try to stay away from, just because I'm not sure it's that great for me as a guy that's trying to still add some muscle in my 40s. And there's so many other options. So, the next source, I think this is, oh, my computer's talking to me. I think this is number 5, and is rice. This might come as a big surprise because typically you would think of rice as a carbohydrate, but especially brown rice does have a fair amount of protein. Now, the pro to this is that it's vegan friendly and it's fairly hypoallergenic. Not a lot of allergy symptoms for most people for rice. The big con is that, as we talked about at the beginning, it's not a complete protein. So you don't necessarily want to have just rice protein as your main protein source. I know my sister, she's allergic to milk products, and she drinks rice milk, which is, a good source of protein, but you have to combine some other protein sources with it to get all the different amino acids to help with muscle recovery and healthy skin and hair and all that stuff. Also, probably growing in popularity with all the different things on the news about hemp in general is hemp protein. Now, this isn't like the CBD oils and just smoke some weed. I probably can't say weed on YouTube. They probably demonetize me, but I'm far away from monetization, so we're not worried about that. You're not smoking this to make your muscles stronger. You're eating the little hemp hearts that are considered a superfood because they have all kinds of essential fatty acids and all of the protein, so it's actually a complete protein even though it's a plant-based source, which is unusual. The only con to it is that it can be pretty difficult to find. Now, I do know that they sell it at the Costco Food Mart by my house, and because it's Costco, you can buy a big bag of it at a fairly realistic price, but hemp hearts could be a little tough to find depending on where you're at, or maybe a little pricey, especially compared to something like whey protein that you can buy a giant tub of at your local store or online at like Amazon fairly cheap. Last but not least in the vegan protein sources would be pea protein. Pea protein is fairly common. I've had it before. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes I find it a little gritty. It just depends on the processing. But it's hypoallergenic, just like the rice protein. And it also is sometimes considered a complete protein, especially when it's a protein isolate version, because it has most of the amino acids and all of the essential, but you still don't get all 21 amino acids in, so you probably want to combine it with some other protein source, whether that's a whole protein source like whey, or if you're trying to stay vegan, maybe having the pea and the hemp or the pea and the rice together so that you're getting a larger amino acid profile. Now, there are some less common but growing in popularity protein sources as well. There's a handful of companies that make protein powder out of beef isolate. So basically just take your nice big prime rib and dehydrate it down and grind it up and make a powder out of it. Or I have seen just in the past week actually a protein powder that's made of pollock, the fish, so it's fish protein. And I have read and seen some videos that popular, especially growing popularity in Europe. We don't see it so much here in the United States yet, but insect protein. So, like mealworms and crickets, very popular in some parts of Asia as healthy snacks. People have eaten crickets for, thousands of years, so it's just not something that we think of so much here, but they're high in protein. Probably doesn't fit so much on the vegan diet, but it is a good source of protein, and probably a little on the crunchy side depending on how it's processed. So you basically can get almost any type of animal or plant-based protein source if you look hard enough. You just want to make sure that it's a protein concentrate or protein isolate, and that the additives aren't too excessive. Some of these protein powders or protein bars have a list, 50 words long, that you'd need some kind of degree in chemistry to figure out what you're eating. Should be a fairly short list. I mean, if you're trying to get protein, you want, a source of protein, and you shouldn't have to have 30 other things in it for it to taste edible, or there's some other issue going on. The other question that comes up when we're worried about, protein sources and types of protein is, how much do I need? Well, that's a little different for everybody. If you look at the recommendations for just the standard recommendations, they claim about 0.5 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. But for most of us watching this type of video, we're a little more active. We're trying to either, lose weight or gain muscle, or some of both. So you want those numbers to be a little higher. I would say at least 1 gram per pound of body weight, or that's just over half a gram per kilo of body weight. As high as 2 grams. 2 grams per pound of body weight is a lot of protein. You're not going to easily get there. Personally, for me, and I work out fairly intensely, I aim for about 1 gram per pound. And that's, I like to eat, and that can be a challenge sometimes. So me getting in, 220, 230 grams of protein a day is a challenge. You'll see on some recommendations, they'll say the average adult needs 50 grams a day. 50 grams a day I think is a little low for most people, especially if you're active. The first thing you need to do is track what you're eating now and see where you're at. If you're healthy and doing pretty well, weight-wise, energy-wise, and you're eating 75 grams a day, don't suddenly try to double that. But you may want to keep your calories the same and just shift your macronutrients, we say, a little bit, where you try to move from 75 to 100, but keep your calories the same by maybe decreasing the carbohydrates or the fat, or both just a little, and see how your body reacts. That's what I have for today for this review of protein. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to see them down in the bottom. And that's how this video got made. So if you have any questions, I will respond to them, and often make a whole video about it, hoping to answer your question, and I'm sure others that have similar questions. Until next time, remember, life is a strength sport, so get stronger and get living.